Next we have Mona Contractor from the Linwood Resource Centre, and someone else as well.
Hello everybody, you've seen me twice in 2 weeks. I don't expect you to remember me. I came in last week as a private individual. Today I'm coming very much with my, thanks Mona, with my professional hat on as a community social worker from, community development worker from the Linwood Resource Centre. Got 1 or 2 props, but I promise you I'll be very attentive to time. I want to tell you very quickly a few stories, being mindful of your time, and want to acknowledge the act of professional listening that you guys have been engaged in over the last few weeks, and that's incredibly tiring. I've been doing it in my social services career for 30 years next year, and sometimes I'm completely knackered, so I salute you in the intensity of what you've been going through. First story. A man gets to his feet in the morning. He's been sleeping rough in a local cemetery. It's shower day at the Christchurch City Mission. He gets cleaned up, then heads to the Linwood Resource Centre and spends 3 hours with a bunch of other blokes at the Linwood Men's Shed working on some planters for the Linwood Village Community Cafe, a project facilitated by Te Whare Roimata. Then, because this man is a former engineer with a desire to do something creative, he collects a lot of bottle tops and creates noughts and crosses outdoor units for play centres and preschools, a way of exercising his heart and his mind. Then he goes back to the cemetery at night. A Woolston woman gets up in the morning. It's been a hard night. Her husband is suffering from a rapidly advancing neurological condition that's claiming both his memory and his body. He's reliant on her support and direction most of the time, including the small hours of the morning. She's exhausted. But when the respite carer comes to look after him, she heads down to the Linwood Resource Centre for a sewing group, a yarn and a cuppa and a bit of a laugh before heading on to another key volunteer role that she performs in the community. 2 key volunteers from the Linwood Fruit and Veggie Co-op, as noted down here, get up early of a Tuesday morning and head across town to Turners and Growers to purchase fruit and veggies. Next day, on the Wednesday, a crew of up to 25 volunteers will pack at St Chad's on Buckley's Road for up to 425 local families. Fresh produce that is affordable for families who are going through hard times. This is an initiative of the Phillipstown Community Centre, Salvation Army Linwood, St Chad's and a number of other community organisations that act as distribution points from their community centres, preschools, rugby clubs, soccer clubs, football clubs, churches, etc. A woman gets up in Mount Pleasant. A brain injury on the operating table years ago means that day-to-day functioning is a challenge for her at best. Still, she makes her way down to the Linwood Resource Centre Community Gardens and helps out. She's an advocate for her community and for those who suffer the debilitating, ongoing, life-changing effects of brain injury. Her determination to contribute to the lives of others despite her own challenges is inspirational. The intersection point of all of these stories, all of these people's lives, are local community venues, local community groups. These stories take place all over the city, from Maryvale to Hay Hay, from Redcliffs to Bromley, from Addington to Aranui. Organisations that function on a shoestring budget, from funding round to funding round, relying on the goodwill of the communities they serve and the partnerships they have with each other, the City Council and other funding bodies. With this in mind, 3 quick points. We appreciate the pressure on community facilities following the quakes. And myself, Mona and I are incredibly grateful for the use of the Linwood Resource Centre, which is on council land, a council building, next to the council facilities on Smith Street. We're incredibly grateful for the use of the facility. Access to facilities like this, in which local organisations carry out community work, is vital. Our centre is used by many other NGOs and statutory organisations as an accessible point for providing services in the community, be they courses on healthy diet through to family group conferences held by Child, Youth and Family through the Residential Advisory Service. People come because the place is not clinical, it's a home, it's accessible, it's close to where they are. and that means something for their engagement in the services. Most community organisations like us are struggling financially and simply couldn't afford market rents or sustain full management responsibility for facilities like these. Please involve local groups like ours in the decision-making processes regarding how local facilities, City Council facilities, will be used for the benefit of local people. Point 2, stretching the shoestring. For consistent grassroots social recovery, which is the ground on which every other form of recovery in this city operates, its people, partnerships between local government, the community and voluntary sector need to be strong, with both parties resourcing each other. The Strengthening Communities funding is an anchor for many community organisations, particularly in this wider political national context in which we find ourselves, in terms of the devolution of responsibility for many services back onto community, frequently without resourcing. That's a question for another forum outside this city. To ensure the resilience of the rich variety of community organisations in this city, please consider increasing the amount of Strengthening Communities funding available to grassroots community organisations over the next 3 years. Last point. As an individual, I can hardly begin to appreciate the complexity of the process faced by Council in leading recovery with community input. For me, the only parallel I can draw as a social worker is working with an incredibly complex, multi-family, multi-issue situation in which there's a lot of pain, a lot of struggle and a lot of competition for resources. That's my only point of reference to the juggle you are having to do with us. I appreciate and value the opportunity to have a say. However, forums like this aren't for everybody. Likewise, dense text, which we're sometimes presented with, is a challenge for many, even the highly literate, or for people like me that struggle to read a balance sheet. But there are many proven tools that can be used to engage people's views and creativity in problem solving and leading our city forward. The use of processes like participatory budgeting, whilst time-consuming and challenging, could enable clearer community participation and fiscal priority setting for Christchurch going forward. We all know, because we're involved in a variety of relationships, both personal and professional, with partners, with our children, with our parents, with colleagues, with our friends, that meaningfully engaging with someone takes time and often involves putting ourselves aside and deliberately leaning towards and learning how that other person or group absorbs, processes, and then responds to information. Let's keep the conversation open about how the broader community and the council can keep resourcing each other as we go forward. The journey to recovery, as we all know, as we experience, is long and is taken one small step after another. We need each other. Let's keep talking. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you very much. I think that you've raised a number of issues that really speak to a range of the submissions that we've received. I've been sort of quite heartened by the number of community organisations or community groups that have come to us not for a request for money, but for a request for a partnership and a more collaborative approach around funding, so that it's not just one to the other. Yeah. It's actually how, combining our resources, we can get the best things done with our communities, because I think that the time for local government or central government to do things for people is really well and truly over if we are to build the extent of resilience that we need going forward. Phil.
Thank you for your presentation. One of the things you referred to, in terms of like the huge range of work and bigger demands on your centre since the earthquakes, it was really you're also saying, look, could we consider increasing the funding for strengthening communities so that groups like yours might benefit? And so I just wondered, would there be any sort of additional outreaches which, if you had further funding, that you might be able to tell us about or suggest?
I think there's huge opportunity both to develop new things but also to sustain what's already there. And one of the challenges which I face, as all people that work in NGOs face, as you go from funding round to funding round, facing the competition of actually doing the work versus funding the work. I've been doing it since I was 19, so I'm aware, and I'm nearly 50, I'm aware that that's just part of the animal. But having something that's sustainable in terms of a funding resource, that means you're able to put more of your heart and head into the people and the groups in front of you is huge, because we're always having to be, and we always will have to be, split in our focus. So yeah, I think there's always a range of new stuff that can happen, but it will involve the same processes: building trust, establishing credibility, making commitment to people long term, regardless of the particular program or process. There are some things that we all know work with people, and they all centre around some pretty similar initiatives. Sorry, that's probably a broad answer to a simple question. Absolutely.
From my former hat on, I mean, I was the MP for Christchurch Central, I think, 25 years ago in October. So I have a long-standing relationship with Linwood Resource Centre, and they've doing an amazing job. We've really run out of time for this one, but thank you very much, John, for coming back in and for making such a powerful representation. Those personal stories, you know, I've been listening to them for a long time myself, and they do make a difference. But they do add up, and the weight on people's shoulders generally across the city is very great, and that's been exacerbated by the experience that we've been through. But, you know, we can take strength from each other, and I think that's the most powerful message that you could bring to the table. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.